Welcome to Building the Future. I'm your host, Kevin Horick. The radio and TV version of the show air in over 12 states. This includes both coasts and Silicon Valley. The show also airs in the UK, Caribbean, and Australia. For full show times, plus past episodes of the TV and radio show, please visit buildingthefutureshow.com. We just launched a free online community to connect past guests, listeners, and others. This community will allow you to network, chat on Slack, or get help with anything else, and a lot more. If you're interested in joining the community, buying some merch, sponsoring the show, or signing up for the newsletter, please go to buildingthefutureshow.com. The show is a proud media partner for the 11th Annual Media Excellence Awards, which are produced by Access Entertainment in Los Angeles, California. The Media Excellence Awards are recognized as the most influential awards show honoring innovation and leadership in all things mobile entertainment, lifestyle, and technology. For more information on how to submit to these awards, please visit mediaxawards.com. Welcome back to the show. Today we have Franco Francese. He's the founder of Matone Restaurant and Bar. Franco, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Kevin.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. You're kind of the first restaurant owner I've had on the show, but for me, I think a lot of people kind of in tech always kind of dream or want to kind of own a restaurant and or kind of bar, and so I thought having you on the show to kind of provide some insight into the space would be very kind of fascinating to myself, and I'm sure the listener. But maybe before we kind of get into all that stuff, let's get to know you a little bit better and start off with where you grew up.
Sure. So I grew up in Westchester, Illinois,
Okay.
Which is a western suburb of Chicago. My parents came to the States from Italy in the late 1960s, and they already had family kind of set up here in the western suburbs of Chicago. So we settled here.
Okay.
But some of my great memories, obviously, are from the good old days in Westchester.
Sure. So walk me through kind of a bit of your childhood, kind of growing up in a family-run kind of restaurant.
Absolutely. So my father was the head chef of a restaurant called Brunetti's, which is in Brookfield, Illinois.
Okay.
It was owned by my godmother
Okay.
and godfather at the time. And then in the late 1980s, so he was there for about 15 to 20 years, I would say.
Wow.
And in the late 1980s, he branched off out onto his own.
Okay.
He decided to start his own restaurant in Westchester called Dee's Little Italy, and that was 1988.
Okay.
In 1991, he moved the restaurant one town over from Westchester to LaGrange Park.
Okay.
And that is where the location of our current restaurant, Matone Restaurant and Bar, is located currently. So now to back up, my childhood, I remember very clearly being always in and around Brunetti's. My mother and my father worked at Brunetti's. We couldn't afford a nanny or a babysitter, so they would take us to work with them.
Interesting.
And a lot of days, if we weren't in school, we were at the restaurant. And I remember palling around with my brothers. The restaurant, I remember, had a basement and an upper level banquet room.
Okay.
And we were always finding something to do at the restaurant. But it was an interesting life. The restaurant business is a hard life. It's long hours.
Sure.
Brunetti's was open for lunch and for dinner. So, there would be a Saturday where we would arrive at 10:30 in the morning and not leave until 1, 2 o'clock at night. If there was a banquet that ran late or something, I mean, we'd be falling asleep on a chair in the office.
Interesting.
So yeah, and you'd see all the workings of the business from, pickup and delivery to catering, banquets, and then just servicing everyday people. They had a bar. So you'd see a little bit of everything in the restaurant business. And that's really how I remember growing up.
Sure. You also mentioned to me kind of before we recorded that you went on some of the deliveries. That must have been kind of just interesting as a kid, just kind of driving around the city.
Absolutely. So it was very fun. Being in a car when you're younger is always kind of an interesting, fun time, right?
Sure.
So to help pass time, we'd go on delivery runs with the delivery drivers. And I remember very clearly 2 or 3 deliveries in the car at one time, and then they'd be marked, and I'd shuffle one of the bags to the driver as he gets, as he pulls up to the house that he's going to.
Sure.
To help him in the process, and just sitting in the car and taking the ride and chatting and watching the process was very fun. And they were delivering pizzas to people's homes in the 70s and 80s.
Very cool.
They were doing delivery for a very long time.
Interesting. So you did go to university. What did you take and why?
Sure. So I went to Valparaiso University in Northwest Indiana, and actually I initially chose Valpo because of the football program. I played football in college.
Okay.
But it was also a very good school with a lot of strong ties to the Chicago area. And I knew my family was in Chicago, and it was all I knew, and it's what I loved. So I wanted to be close by and set myself up for a career afterwards in the Chicagoland area. So, but I started out I thought I wanted to be a doctor.
Okay.
I started out taking a lot of the biology and chemistry courses. And then, after my first year, I switched to the business track. And I focused on finance as a career path, if you will.
What made you get into finance? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, I always had a strong kind of math background.
Okay.
And coupling that with my father, who was an entrepreneur,
okay,
I thought learning about management, about marketing, I thought I could help my dad, because
interesting.
We came from a very humble, small town in Italy to the U.S. where he could run his own business and raise a family.
Sure.
And I always wanted to try to help him in some way, shape, or form. And I thought, well, learning marketing, learning basic statistics and management, accounting, all that stuff would be useful to him and his business. And then potentially for me in my career. It was really not until my senior year of college when I started focusing on things like the stock market. So I graduated in 2000. And I remember our senior finance course that I took where we ran a mock stock portfolio.
Okay.
And anybody that bought stocks in the late 90s made tons of money. So
sure.
My mock stock portfolio was fantastic. Like I thought I was crushing it, right?
Okay,
so
interesting.
That's what kind of led me to my first job out of school, which was in the financial services / kind of Wall Street career.
Okay.
And I don't know if you want to segue to that, but that's kind of where I finished school.
Yeah, give us a bit of background on kind of your background. I know the restaurant kind of tied into that, so walk us through kind of your financial career and then transitioning into kind of the restaurant.
Yep. And so throughout college, I'd always stay involved with the restaurant. So summer job was a waiter or manager or whatever Dad needed help with in the late 90s. But then between my junior and senior year, I got my first internship at LaSalle Bank in the credit division. So I was part of a lending division at LaSalle Bank, and I started getting a taste for some of the other careers that were available out there. And that's when I graduated. The first job that I got out of college was trading bonds for a small brokerage firm in the western suburbs of Chicago, in Barrington. So I got that first job, and it was followed by basically a 15-year career, all in financial services, doing mostly equity sales.
Okay.
So, and equity sales to institutions. That was my job for 15 years.
Interesting. Okay. So how did you transition out of that into kind of taking over, kind of rebranding, and actually running the restaurant full time?
Sure. My father, who at that time, he came to me in 2009 and said, I'm starting to get tired. I'd like to start thinking about retirement and potentially selling the restaurant. And I looked at my dad, who a great man, and I wanted to help him.
Sure.
But the timing was just brutal. We were in the middle of the financial crisis.
Right.
We were in a massive recession. Credit wasn't flowing.
Sure.
So, and real estate values were plummeting. So I basically said to him, why don't you let me take over the restaurant? I'll bring in some fresh blood and turn you into the landlord.
Okay.
And the restaurant at the time was not doing well because it was basically in a low tide as it relates to the economy. A lot of people were very, very cautious about what they were eating. Everybody was very price conscious. People were cooking a lot at home, and everything was about saving dollars.
Sure.
So that incremental spend that people were used to giving when times were good just dried up.
Sure.
So the restaurant was very slow. So I made the decision that if I did that, I'd want to rebrand it and give some, people something to talk about. Give people
so almost like a marketing strategy.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I felt like we could still keep a lot of the same faithful patrons that we had at the time,
right? But
perhaps maybe attract some new people as well that want to see, hey, what's the new restaurant going in over here?
Right.
Is it interesting? Is it, what do they have there? So we started looking at the menu. We started looking at the decor. We came up with a very similar concept. And Dee's Little Italy was your traditional, old school great Italian comfort food restaurant.
Okay.
And you could go and get a healthy portion of lasagna and baked mostaccioli and all of those kind of what you would deem as like those awesome old school comfort food Italian dishes. And we started giving some thought to what is an interesting potential way to change the menu, keeping the concept but adding new menu items.
Sure.
So we didn't want to disgruntle our current patrons because business was slow enough, but we wanted to have some things that would attract new patrons.
Sure, makes sense.
So we thought of the concept of the wood-fired oven, and I think we were really ahead of the curve in 2009 with respect to buying a wood-fired oven.
Okay.
There was another restaurant in Chicago called Spaccanapoli that had done it for years.
Okay.
And let's be honest, the Italians have been cooking in wood-fired ovens for thousands of years. So It was nothing new to Italians. But the interesting part of the wood-fired ovens is the heat that they generate and how you can create a number of new interesting dishes, not just pizza, but sandwiches and fish dishes and chicken dishes. So we started cooking lots of things in this wood-fired oven. And what was different about Matone is we put it in the center of the restaurant in the front where people can see it.
Okay, interesting.
So we had a separate chef that or cook that manages the wood-fired oven in the front. So it was interactive.
Okay.
People could walk up. They could see the food being cooked. They could smell it throughout the entire dining room.
Interesting.
And people really enjoyed that. It wasn't an easy thing to do because you had the extra labor cost of constantly manning it.
Right.
And, there are logistical issues with having a separate cooking area in the front. But all that aside, I think people found it intriguing. And in the wintertime, for example, to walk in and see almost like this fireplace, this glowing heat that you could feel. If you get close enough, you could feel the heat coming out of this wood-fired oven, and it just became this very interesting centerpiece. And it's still obviously there today. It's an important part of what we do. And Matone is actually an Italian word that stands for brick, and this oven is made out of brick. So it's a brick oven that's fired with wood.
Interesting. So how did you guys kind of decide, though, to do that? Like, did you guys just kind of brainstorm some ideas, or how did you kind of come up with the idea to go in and install like a brick oven?
Yeah, it was very we had visited Spaccanapoli, which was
Okay.
is still a very popular Chicago, in the Ravenswood area of Chicago,
Okay.
that does Neapolitan style pizza right out of their wood-fired oven, and it's displayed. So it's not something that I'd say we came up with on our own.
Sure.
It has origins back to the way that people have been cooking and are still cooking in Italy today.
Okay, interesting.
But someone else had done it here already. So it was basically, how can we resonate with that Italian population that grew up in Italy, that was used to eating out of these wood-fired ovens, but also find this kind of very attractive way of presenting it to people? Because
Sure.
it's one thing if you have it in the back,
Yeah.
but you know how it is. Out of sight is out of mind.
Yeah, totally.
So, but when you have it in the front, it captures people's imagination, and it captures their senses as well, because you're smelling, you can see, and you can almost reach out and feel everything that's being made there.
Yeah.
And you could see the quality of it. So there's always been this emotional connection that people have with food.
Sure.
Whether it's
totally.
positive or negative, people have been sharing food at tables for years. So there's always this emotional connection. There's always these great memories associated with food. So we decided that people could get a better glimpse of it if the oven was in front, and we built the rest of the dining room around it after we did the remodel.
So what types of stuff did you keep on the menu, and what types of stuff did you add outside of the stuff you already kind of mentioned with the oven?
Yeah. So right now, the mainstays are pizza and wood-fired oven sandwiches. We do our baked clams out of the oven.
Okay.
But we also do some seasonal items. Like, for example, we just took our Brussels sprouts and acorn squash appetizer off the menu.
Okay.
We typically put it on in the fall
Okay.
and run it through the spring. So that's something that is cooked in the wood-fired oven up front.
Okay.
There are a couple other dishes that we would deem as seasonal items, but it varies. What's nice about doing a wood-fired oven sandwich is you can go in 50 different directions with it. We have 4 or 5 on the menu that are on the menu all the time, and then we run weekly specials. We've done a Cubano, we've done a chicken Parmesan, we've done a meatball sandwich out of the wood oven.
Okay.
Those aren't on the regular menu. Those
Gotcha.
will run as specials. So and wood-fired oven pizzas, we have 4 or 5 on the menu that are mainstays, and then we'll do all kinds of different interesting, fun specials. That we also do a pizza of the month.
Okay.
Okay.
Sure.
So we'll have a special pizza that runs for an entire month, and then we change it up, every first of the month. So if somebody likes a special, then they know they can get it there for the rest of the month. And
right.
we'll use the data that we garner from those things to maybe change up the menu. If there's a pizza of the month where people are, if there's a pizza of the month that we run and people are coming back for it on a weekly basis, then the next time we do a menu switch, which is every about 6 months,
okay,
we could add that to the menu on a full-time basis. And as long as we have the items, we'll make the stuff anyway. So.
Got you. Okay. No, interesting. So how do you come up with kind of, new weekly features, new kind of monthly specials? How do you guys kind of do that?
So there's what's interesting about the restaurant business, as you probably will know, I would say 65 to 70% of the revenue is done in 3 days: Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And while I'd love to be busy Monday through Thursday, earlier in the week typically allows lots of time for innovation and brainstorming.
Okay.
And so we have cooks, we have chefs, we have owners that will go out and taste things on other people's menus and do some research through the web, see what other people are doing that is successful. And then we tinker around and we play with the oven. We'll make pizzas, and we'll come up with something we think is really interesting, and then we'll let the staff try it. Like the staff is usually a really good barometer of what everyday people like to eat.
Sure.
You know, the chefs can get stuck in their own, what they think is great and what they feel is good. But if you don't sample it out to people, you're never really going to understand or know what other people like. So we like to poll our own staff as well. And if they like something, we'll run with it.
Sure.
The other thing that we'll do every once in a while is like a server's choice.
Okay.
So we'll run a special where we'll let the servers actually pick the special.
Interesting.
Yeah. And typically it's something that we've already done.
Okay.
That they enjoyed and found popular, and then we'll bring it back.
Okay.
But you know, getting them involved in the process also helps us with the selling of the products.
Right.
When we do feature them, if the servers are bought in to the process,
interesting.
They're just much more interested in selling those products because they feel like, well, listen, I had input into this.
Yeah.
I put my name to this. I want to sell it. So that's another thing is trying to involve the staff more, and we want to do more of that as well. So.
Sure. So how do you kind of stay relevant in today's industry? You guys seem to have adopted kind of technology quite a bit with kind of online ordering, and you've obviously have been doing delivery. So maybe walk us through why you've kind of adopted online kind of technology and online ordering.
So, look, it's really a function of what our staying in touch with our customers and what they want, right? So innovation, you look around and you follow companies like Google and Microsoft and Facebook and Amazon,
sure.
And you can't help but notice all of the different ways that they are trying to innovate. And Uber Eats, Grubhub, Chow Now, there's a bunch of, the Yelp has a couple platforms that they've acquired along the way. Online ordering is the way that the next generation is getting food. And I think part of the reason for that, and what I mean by the next generation is, I mean millennials. And part of the reason for that, in my opinion, is the prevalence and importance of Amazon throughout the world. Amazon is conditioning people to go to their phone, place an order, or go to the web, place an order, and then it gets delivered to them within 2 business days. In some cases, with Amazon Prime, within 2 hours. So they are a huge influence on what is happening and the way people are used to getting their things.
Sure.
Getting Blue Apron and Amazon and Freshly and all of
right.
these companies are doing pre-made meals that get delivered to a house, and then they get combined and put together by the individual person. So the world is moving in that direction. So if you don't innovate, then forget. Like you've got no shot at capturing the next customer,
sure.
if you will. This huge demographic that is the millennials. People still like to go out for a nice meal. I think there's the baby boomers who are entering their retirement. I think they're still used to going out and getting that nice meal. And they might be willing to go out 2-3 times a week. I don't know, roughly. The millennial doesn't have that amount of time or money. So I think they're more interested in going out maybe once a week.
Okay.
And then, getting their meals sent to their house.
Right.
So we needed to stay on that trend. So we adopted online ordering 5 years ago. If I could have done it earlier than that, I would have done it earlier than that. But
okay.
I can tell you that it has been a fantastic addition to our business. It's a channel that people enjoy using. It's easy for them to use. They're used to using it as it relates to Amazon
sure.
and some of these other, there's plenty of other people like Walmart and everybody else that deliver, you can order online and have it delivered. So we want to stay on that trend. That doesn't mean that we're not going to emphasize the importance of innovating with respect to the food, because we always need to make sure that every restaurant's going to have those top 5 sellers, right? We want to make sure the next 10 are awesome too. And so we're constantly trying to innovate menu items, but also the manner in which we deliver the food or provide the product has and will continue to change over time.
Sure. So how much does social media kind of play into all this? Do you use it quite a bit or not really?
We do. We have a Facebook page. We have an Instagram page that we use very frequently. I think you just have to follow the eyeballs.
Okay.
And it's all you have to do is read about the number of unique users that Facebook reports on a quarterly basis. And they have just a huge presence.
Sure.
And they have mind share. And I feel like the cost of advertising on social media, because you can geolocate,
right,
is very cost effective relative to things like TV,
sure,
relative to things like radio. So we use the social media channel a lot.
Okay.
Not only just sharing things for free, but also boosting certain posts to get people's attention. Like it works for us. It works, Matone Restaurant works very well when we do events.
Okay.
Right. So if we're doing an event like a Mother's Day brunch or something,
sure,
we get very good return on investment for our social media ads, if you will.
Sure. Interesting.
Now, that being said, we also still do, and we could talk a little bit about advertising if you want, but
sure,
we still do, we still send flyers to people's homes once or twice a year. We still do like everyday direct mailing, because there's a certain segment of the population that is used to getting things in the mail, and they're used to placing orders that way. So we don't want to. It's a more expensive channel.
So that still works for certain age ranges.
Believe it or not, there's certain demographics, and I think it skews. I think it's more by age. I mean, we have totally abandoned the Yellow Pages book, right? That's gone. I think that's a dying. But believe it or not, they still distribute them, and they still sell advertising in there.
Sure.
I can't imagine why or who uses that. But it's more important for us to make sure our Google landing page is right and the information is correct,
sure,
and our Yelp page, for example. But we definitely need to stay on the direct mail marketing stuff. It's less and less over time.
Interesting. Yeah. No, that makes some sense. I figured the direct mail stuff worked. It's just for certain age ranges, but it's interesting, right? How, because that's kind of obviously like a traditional kind of way of doing something, where obviously online ordering is pretty modern. It's interesting just to kind of get the most amount of eyeballs in front of things. You need to kind of use both mediums.
Yeah. And so I think, over time, and it's been happening for years.
Sure.
There's going to continue to be a shift from that traditional marketing channel to the digital marketing channel. It's just it's happening every day. And I think our budget will reflect that over time as well. But while it's measurable, we can still see, like on the weekends that we pass, I call it passing flyers, but basically we print out a very nice color copy of our menu.
Yeah. And
then we distribute it to certain zip codes.
Okay.
On those weekends, we see bumps in our business.
Interesting.
Absolutely. So we know that it's still having an impact, still working. I think it's just going to be less and less over time.
Sure. So. And it sounds like you guys are very much willing to like trial and error some of this stuff, right? Like you try something once, if it works, you'll keep doing it. If it doesn't work, you probably try something new. Is that fair to say?
I think you have to. I think you have to find what works best, and then you have to change it up. If there's something that's not working, definitely you have to be willing to make a change and try something different, try something new. I think that's very, very important. And it kind of keeps the consumer on their toes as well. What are we going to see are we going to see something from Matone in the mail? Or are we going to get it straight to our phone? Are we going to get a text? Are we going to get an email? Right. I don't know. We try to keep it, we continue to try to change it up. Absolutely.
Sure. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on, obviously there's like chain restaurants that are across the country and kind of beyond. How does that kind of help or hinder your guys' business? Because I think a lot of people like the comfort of going to, the Olive Garden because they've been to the Olive Garden in a bunch of states and it always tastes pretty similar, compared to something where you guys obviously you're unique, you have kind of one location. How does that kind of help or hinder you compared to kind of the big chains?
The large chains are brutal competitors. Okay. They have cost advantages.
Sure.
They have advantages of scale. They have deep pockets. So competition is brutal. What we need to, but all of those places, and I don't care which one you tell me about, the
Sure.
larger the better.
Okay.
They all cook mostly out of commissary kitchens. They package the food, then they send it, and there's just something about the quality that changes.
Sure.
So we need to be able to offer a better quality product in order for people to get people to say, this is worth spending the extra $2 or $3 for.
Sure.
This is worth it to me to make that spend.
Sure.
Whether it's the freshness of the local ingredients that we use,
Sure.
or, maintaining an open line of communication with the local farmers and the local growers of product, the local meat providers, the poultry providers, making sure that we're using fresh ingredients that aren't processed, that get as fast as we can from the farm, if you will, to the table. People
Sure.
talk about farm to table restaurants all the time.
Yeah.
We try to shorten that distribution loop as much as we can. And then it's about cooking technique, right? So great ingredients plus cooking technique is what creating fantastic food is all about.
Sure.
So we have to go the extra mile. We have to learn about things like blanching and braising and glazing and applying certain cooking techniques, which is more expensive, which takes more time, which takes more money, but ultimately produces these just better products. Where if you put a plate of what we are serving to a similar plate side by side with a competitor, it should be a night and day difference.
Sure.
So
Interesting.
if they can ever close the gap and keep their price advantage, it would be very difficult to compete. But that has not happened yet. I can tell you so many people that are willing to pay more for a nicer dish or a nicer option than they'll get at an Olive Garden, if you will. And nothing against Olive Garden. But,
no, interesting. That's kind of what I figured, but I'm just kind of curious. So what advice would you give somebody that's maybe looking to invest or maybe own or kind of get into the space?
So it's a question that I could probably talk about for an hour. But
okay.
Ultimately, investing in a restaurant is a very tricky, very difficult investment. It's about an investment in the right people.
Sure.
It's about people that have experience in the industry, that are willing to do the work. So there's a difference between someone who is a name and maybe knows a thing or two about the business, but is not necessarily vested in spending time there.
Sure.
I think you have less risk if you are invested in someone who's there every day.
Okay, sure.
versus someone who's just kind of managing from 20,000 feet.
Sure.
I can talk about things like location risk. I can talk about things like concept risk.
Okay.
You know, I don't recommend investing in a restaurant within a mile or two of a behemoth that is of a similar concept.
Makes sense.
If you're investing in a single place, for example, a one unit restaurant, and let's say it's a Chinese food or a Chinese food restaurant.
Okay.
Do not want to open next to the Chinese place that's been around for 10 years.
Sure.
And so you're taking significant concept risk.
Okay.
And while you might be able to have a little better product, it is going to take years to change people's, eating habits.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
Ultimately, people are creatures of habit.
Sure.
So if you're a restaurant, you need to have everything in place and everything put together in order to take customers from one place and pull them to another, because they have their ways. People have their ways about them. People
Sure.
have things that they enjoy and things that they do. So unless the current restaurant is doing something to screw that up, well, then it's going to be very difficult for you to lure them away from that. Now, if it's a different concept, that's different. Well, it's risky to have a different concept, but it's something new. It's something that would intrigue someone. Hey, let's try this. Let's say you're opening in a town that has an Italian place and a Chinese place, but it doesn't have a Mexican place, and you're going to be the Mexican food restaurant.
Sure.
That's more intriguing. That's less risky, in my opinion.
Sure.
So because you can offer something different.
No,
But if you're going to offer the same old thing that's right down the street, it's going to take years for you to quote unquote steal the customers, and you might not make it while that whole process is happening.
Yeah, because there's a lot of overhead, right?
Right. Absolutely.
The other thing that I'm always kind of curious about that I've heard, like, that people seem to maybe it's more on the bar side than kind of the restaurant side, but they might only be open 3-4 nights a week, but they think it's like a part-time job. But from my understanding, and I've never been a bar or restaurant owner, that it's basically full-time. Even you need to be working on it kind of full-time, even if you're only open, a few days a week. Is that correct?
Absolutely. There's always a certain amount of, whether it's prep work that's being done on days off, whether it's inventory or ordering,
Sure.
or fixing the sink, or changing a light bulb, or submitting your sales tax figures
Okay.
On a monthly basis. There's always work to do. There's always lots of things that are going on behind the scenes. So there's no day off. I was on vacation last week for July 4th, and
Okay.
I worked I had little messages or things that I had to attend to at least every other day, if not every day.
Okay.
So there's always something. The amount of time is, kind of up to you. I always recommend that people try to unplug. I think some people, it makes sense to have at least one day off. It gives everybody a break, or a perceived break.
Sure.
And you got to. And not everybody's working 7 days anyway, but having one day off where you don't have to actually deal with customers. Not that that's a problem. But,
yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Somewhere where you can just focus. Nobody is going to be knocking on the door to come in because you're closed. When you can just focus on the important things that it takes to run a restaurant, I think that's important. I think you need to try to do that. Now, Matone is open 7 days a week, so
Sure.
we hope to see everybody even on Mondays. But
Sure.
so we don't necessarily follow that rule. I think if I was opening a new restaurant today, I would try to work in one day off if I could.
No, that makes sense. I think it's kind of the whole space is kind of fascinating to me, But is there any other advice that you would give people maybe once it's kind of up and running?
Yeah. I think so. When we rebranded,
Okay.
and we kind of go back to this story. When we rebranded, we did everything. We did make menu changes. We did disgruntle some of the current patrons.
Okay.
But you absolutely have to focus on bringing in new people. And so when you think about your spend, so many people focus on, I got to get open. I got to get open. I've got to get open.
Right.
And, there are delays in construction, and this costs more than you thought it was going to cost. And this is taking more time than this, you run into all kinds of issues when you're trying to open. And then you lose track of, just because you slap some new paint on the wall and put up a new sign, that doesn't mean that everyone is just going to sprint on over and try the new restaurant. I mean,
Sure.
You'll be busy. You should be busy at first, but that 3 to 6 months after, or call it a year or two after, you need to continue to pump, I think, money into marketing dollars to try to attract new people.
Okay.
I call it I call it personally my customer bucket.
Okay.
Right? I need to make sure that I'm filling my customer bucket, because the bucket's going to have a hole in the bottom. You're going to lose people. People are going to move. People are going to die. Like, it's bad things
Sure.
can happen.
Right.
And you're going to lose customers over time. You need to make sure you're filling your bucket with customers and trying to attract new customers in new ways until you are at a point where you're operating at a steady state where you can keep good staff and generate good cash flow. And that just takes a lot of time.
Sure. Would you ever open a second location?
Absolutely. We're working on that right now. In fact, so
Okay.
we're in negotiations for another location. I've been looking for the better part of 12 months.
Okay. So how do you replicate what you've done, with obviously the kind of flagship restaurant, and actually getting the kind of the same quality brand recognition in a new location?
Yeah, that's a to be determined for me, to be honest, Kevin. Like, I don't
Sure.
know the answers to that
Okay.
yet.
Interesting.
So what we've been doing is making sure that we have recipe books, that
Okay.
we have operational manuals,
Okay.
so that we can make sure that we replicate what we're doing from the quality of food standpoint
Sure.
to whatever the new location is going to be. So that's number one. Number two, I think you have to have a very tight understanding of the community that you're entering, because every
Sure.
community is different. Every community has different needs and wants. And I think knowing and understanding and having a good feel for that ahead of time is paramount. And
Sure.
look, certain menu items may resonate very, very well in one community, and you might have a different demographic in a different community that likes something else.
Right.
So you need to know what you're stepping into before you step into it.
Sure. So how are you doing that research?
So I search out demographics.
Okay.
I talk to the local. So I do a search on demographics, and I say, what are the nationalities of
Okay,
people that
sure.
live in a certain town, for
Okay.
example? How many people are in that town?
Right.
How many people travel that town to work in that town
Sure.
versus how many people leave that town on a daily basis? That can help me determine if I want to be open for lunch or not, right?
Sure.
We've got
Sure.
you got a lot of people travel to that town for business or for work. Well, then, you'll have a need for lunch. And if you don't, you might not need to open for lunch.
Sure.
So knowing all that stuff ahead of time, understanding what the competition is, what the competition charges, right?
Sure.
I think it's interesting. Some people would make a huge mistake by not understanding, where are people eating? What are the popular restaurants in and around there? What are they doing? What are they doing successfully?
Right.
Go in, sit down in that restaurant, order some food, talk to the servers, say, excuse me, but what's your best-selling dish? Why do you think it sells so well? And
Okay.
just have an idea of what is making people successful. And is is it a low price dish? Is it a high price dish?
Sure.
Start to look and gather data just based on experience, and then make sure that you're offering something similar. You make sure that your menu is on point with that, right? If you have something already that you've tried on as a special in the flagship that may work really well in the new location based on what you're seeing, then you try those things. I think that's the way that I'm trying to replicate. I don't consider what we do to be a vanilla box where you can just open it anywhere. I think there are some great concepts out there that are like that.
Sure.
And they'll resonate very well. I feel like for the level of cooking that we do, we just need to be very unique. And that's going to make it harder to scale, to be honest. It'll make it harder to open multiple locations. But I think if we do the research ahead of time, we'll be more successful.
No, that makes sense. And I guess it also plays into kind of what you talked about earlier is like sourcing local ingredients. Obviously, if you're, further away from where you're getting certain ingredients, you might just say, you know what, we're not going to carry that item and we're going to get different ingredients from this place that's even closer. Is that kind of fair to say?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I think knowing and understanding what your suppliers can provide in the area that you're in will definitely play a part in how you're designing menu items. Because if you want to offer a different quality, that next level of quality, then you need to be as close to the sustainable resources that you're going to need on a daily basis.
Sure. So I'm curious then to get a little bit of thoughts on how long are your days? Are they kind of 9 hours, 12 hours, longer than that on kind of average?
On average, I'd say it's 10 hours typically. Okay. So and we're unique that we're not open at lunchtime.
Okay.
We do a lot of private events at lunchtime.
Okay.
The community that we are in is fantastic, but it doesn't have a ton of people traveling to it for business.
Okay.
So or it doesn't have a ton of businesses in general, as a number of great local small businesses, but not enough to support an everyday lunch crowd.
Got you.
In order to sustain the cost of the labor that's associated with staffing the restaurant.
Sure. Okay.
So we're unique in that sense, but we still have. I mean, I've worked 13, 14-hour days. I mean,
sure.
there's plenty of those, and there will be plenty of those in the future.
Sure.
But on average, it's 10.
Yeah, so that's not bad. Like, that's not terrible.
I try to take 2 days off.
Okay.
And sometimes it's less, and sometimes it's more. We're set up differently. My brother, who's the co-owner, he's on vacation this week, so I'll be at the restaurant I'll be at the restaurant pretty much every day.
Gotcha. So. Okay. So you guys kind of give back to the community. Do you want to maybe talk about that and why that's
Absolutely.
important?
So I think it's really important to stay in contact with all the local organizations and make sure that you're giving back. Ultimately, 90% of the revenue that's generated at Matone Restaurant comes within 5 miles of
Interesting.
So local chamber of commerce, local charities, the local Little League team. We stay involved with all of those organizations, and we either, we'll provide food from time to time. There's an organization called Bed Plus, which does a soup drive every year for homeless people. We donate, 10 gallons of soup.
Sure.
We sponsor a Little League team in LaGrange Park.
Okay.
There's lots of ways that we try to give back to the community. We had a young girl and who passed away from cancer, and we held a fundraiser, and helped give back proceeds to the family. And one of those, we gave the family free pizza for a year.
Oh, very cool. That's really cool of you guys.
To help them get through the hardship that they had to experience.
Sure.
Whenever we see an opportunity like that, we make sure we are present. If it's volunteering time, then great. If it's volunteering food, fine. Whatever it is, I think it's important to stay in touch with local community members, and we will continue to do that.
Sure. No, I think that's great, right? And obviously, it's getting your name out in the community. It's kind of like a soft sell kind of marketing, right? And kind of keeps you guys front and center, right? So I think that makes a lot of sense, right?
And people probably question whether or not it's genuine. Like, it's absolutely genuine, but there's a motive as well. Like,
sure,
we want people to associate the restaurant down the street as good people who are always willing to help no matter what.
Sure.
And while we hope that there's good positive vibes and repercussions for that, that's the goal.
Sure. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that's what anybody's doing, right? When like, it's genuine, but obviously they're trying to stay relevant as well, right? Like, so it benefits both sides. But we're coming to the end of the show, so let's maybe close with mentioning where people can get more information about you guys and any other links you want to mention.
Sure. So our website is matonerestaurant.com. You can find us on Instagram at Matone Rest.
Okay.
And searching Matone Restaurant via Facebook will pop up as well. We'd love to have people following our page so they could see pictures of all the food that we're putting out. If you go to our website, you'll find an ability to do online ordering. So if you wanted to place an order, if you happen to be in the area and you want to try the food, great. You can go to our website to book a reservation.
Sure.
We use OpenTable for our platform.
Gotcha.
To do reservations. So you can find us in a lot of different ways by searching Matone Restaurant in LaGrange Park. And we'd love to have folks give us a try when they're in the neighborhood. I will also mention that we are very close to a large zoo, Brookfield Zoo in the western suburbs. And that this time of year, in summertime, there are a lot of visitors to that zoo.
Sure.
And those visitors are always looking for a place to eat, typically afterwards. And I'm sure the food at the zoo is great, but come on by afterwards. We're only a couple miles up the street from the zoo. And
sure.
we'd love to serve some dinner after a long day of walking around.
Sure. So. And just for people, the spelling of Matone is Mattone, and then restaurant.com.
Correct. Yes.
Perfect. Well, I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to be on the show, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you, and have a good rest of your day, man.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Kevin.
Thanks, man. Okay. Bye.
Thanks for listening. To join the free community, buy some merch, sponsor the show, or sign up for the newsletter, please visit the website at buildingthefutureshow.com. The music for the show is done by Electric Mantra. You can check them out at electricmantra.com and keep building the future.